Welcome to the St. Thomas More Lynchburg's Homily Podcast. We join Father John Christian as he brings his insight and application to the readings for the Solemnity of Corpus Christi.
For over 800 years, the Church has observed the solemnity of the most holy body and blood of our Lord Jesus Christ, often referred to simply as Corpus Christi. It is one of only two feasts of devotion, the other one being last Sunday, Trinity Sunday. For it's interesting, if you consider all the other feasts and solemnities of the Church, they all commemorate an event like the Transfiguration, Pentecost, the Resurrection, Ascension. But Trinity Sunday and Corpus Christi Sunday are days of devotion. We know, of course, that our Lord instituted the Holy Sacrament of the Eucharist on Holy Thursday, when he instituted the priesthood and gave his Church that great commission of charity. But so too on that day did he also enter into his passion that very evening. And so it has been long kind of observed that the institution of the Most Blessed Sacrament gets a little lost as it gets swept up in all of those other things. And so towards the end of the 12th century, towards the end of the 12th century, there was born in the northwestern part of the Holy Roman Empire a nun who went by the name of Juliana. We know her, of course, now as Saint Juliana, and she was living in that part of the Holy Roman Empire that's now contained within Belgium. But she would receive visions from our Lord Jesus Christ, and in her visions and dreams that were a recurring thing, she would see an image of a moon that she discerned was a sign for the church militant, that is, the church on earth. But on this full moon, there was an obscured band. A piece of it was missing, and in her locutions, rather in the locutions from our Lord Jesus Christ, she came to discern that there was something missing in the church's festive observances. And it was specifically, a celebration of the most holy body and blood of our Lord Jesus Christ. And now St. Juliana kept this to herself for at least a couple of decades until she began to share it. And it was received fairly well, for in the court of the Prince Bishop of that region, there was one certain James Pantaleon who was serving as an archdeacon in the bishop's court. Remember that name, James Pantaleon. He supported this endeavor and thought this is a good thing to celebrate the body and blood of our Lord Jesus Christ. And so it became an observance in that province. A few decades later, or rather maybe one or two, I can't recall exactly the date, there was in the southern part of the Holy Roman Empire a certain priest named Peter of Prague. And he was a priest who was plagued by doubts. He would say the holy sacrifice of the Mass, he would say the words of institution, but he doubted whether it was true. He wasn't sure if he could bring himself to believe that what was confected there upon the altar was truly the body, blood, soul, and divinity of our Lord Jesus Christ. And so he resolved to make a pilgrimage to Rome to pray with the tombs of the saints and hopefully gain perspective and clarity and to bolster his wavering faith. And so he made his way to Rome, made his pilgrimage, and on his trip back up to the Holy Roman Empire, about two-thirds of the way up the Italian peninsula, he stopped to say Mass in a chapel, as was his duty. And while he was saying that Mass, after the words of institution, the host began to bleed profusely, down all over his hands, dripping into the chalice, and all over the corporal, that is, the linens of the altar. And so our priest, Peter of Prague, seems to have had definitely somewhat of a panic attack and gathered it all up and immediately put it in the tabernacle and sent word to the local bishop that something has happened here. And when that news spread to a neighboring town, which is very familiar to anyone who might have ever taken a trip there, nearby was the town of Orvieto. And over in Orvieto, there was a certain James Pantaleon, except at this point, he went by Urban IV and was the reigning pontiff. And so when news got to him that something had happened just a little ways over the mountain there, he requested that be brought to him. And when it was, he saw it and immediately discerned that, yes, this is something miraculous. This is a Eucharistic miracle and the answer to many, many prayers. For in that period in the church's history, There were numerous Eucharistic heresies that were beginning to spring up, and this event happened to kind of remove any doubt. I'm sure it did for Peter of Prague. And so Urban IV declared, for the first time in church history through papal authority, a universal feast to be celebrated throughout the church. He issued it with his bull Transitoris de Hoc Mundo, establishing this solemnity for the entire universal church in the year 1264. And he, of course, asked none other than St. Thomas Aquinas to compose the hymns and prayers and propers for the Mass of this day and the hours of the divine office. Most of our greatest Eucharistic hymns come from the office for this solemnity. This is only one of, now in the current calendar, 3 solemnities that retains a sequence, as we heard that poem of St. Thomas Aquinas that is heard before the gospel. Only Pentecost and Easter still retain a sequence. And so the church has set aside this day to be a celebration of the most holy body and blood of our Lord Jesus Christ, free from the shadow of his passion and free from the solemnity of Lent, at a time in which its full festive celebrations can be observed. For what we are talking about again here is one of the most fundamental doctrines and dogmas of the church, the real presence. It has been dividing people since the beginning, though, unfortunately. For if we recall, as we listen to the Bread of Life discourse in chapter 6 of the Gospel of John, as we heard from today, we heard how it started with Jesus observing that the Jews were quarreling amongst themselves about how can this man tell us to eat his flesh? Well, if you recall, at the end of that discourse, many will walk away from him. They'll say, this is impossible. Who can believe this? Who can accept this? And Jesus does not go after them saying, oh, no, wait, you've misunderstood. I was merely speaking figuratively. No, they depart from him. He turns to his disciples and says, do you too wish to leave me? They say, no, Lord, you have the words of everlasting life. And so there is perhaps no greater defining characteristic of the faith than the doctrine of the real presence of our Lord Jesus Christ, body, blood, soul, and divinity, and that most holy sacrament of the altar. Our Lord gave us this memorial of himself. He ascended into heaven and is seated at the right hand of God the Father Almighty, and yet his presence abides with us behind the bronze doors of this tabernacle within this church at all times. Our Lord is present to us. Every time the holy sacrifice of the Mass is said on this altar or any altar around the world, our Lord Jesus Christ is present to us. Such was his love for us that he desired to leave us this everlasting, enduring memorial of himself. And so when we pause to consider that, when faced with something so grand and so majestic, so spectacular, so wondrous, so utterly miraculous, that we have to ask ourselves some of those hard questions. We have to ask ourselves, kind of like Peter of Prague was faced with, do I accept it? Do I believe? Or is this too hard? Is this too much? Do we want to depart? I mean, we're all here, so hopefully we all want to believe. But belief isn't easy, but it can be ultimately subject to our power, the power of our will. Ultimately, we're called to choose to believe. Or to choose to believe our Lord Jesus Christ is to choose to love God. And how could we do otherwise when we have received such a tremendous warrant of his divine love for us? Our Lord Jesus Christ gave us the model of his self-giving with that Last Supper. It was all consummated upon the cross as he shed his very lifeblood and gave his life for us. And so now he has satisfied the requirement of sacrifice once and for all by that gift of himself. And so then the challenge for us is to ask ourselves that hard question, to receive the testimony of our ancestors in the faith, our parents, our grandparents, all those who came before us, the sacred scriptures, the holy saints of the church, the holy men and women that have gone before us, to look at all this and ask, do I believe? To look at it all and give a reasoned assent of our intellect and will, and to say, yes, I do believe. For if we hold that this is truly God present to us, God in our midst, God being communicated to us, body, blood, soul, and divinity, being received by us in this Holy Communion, then it has some very real practical implications. For if we believe it, do we act like it? It's one thing to say it, as they say, you can talk the talk, but do you walk the walk? It's not easy, the Christian life. It's very hard. It's very, very difficult. There are many, many pitfalls throughout this life. But do we resolve to live as a person who believes that this is truly God? Do we offer him our best, right? In the Eucharistic prayer, we talk about the sacrifice of Abel the just. We call Abel the just because justice renders unto each as his is due. And so Abel gives to God what is his due. He gives him the very first fruits, gives him the best. Or do we give the offering of Cain? Do we give second best, third best? Do we withhold that which is best for ourselves or something we deem more important? For the way we comport ourselves speaks to what we believe. Do we respond to the love of our Lord Jesus Christ with awe and reverence and adoration and fervent devotion? Or do we let ourselves become complacent in the face of such a grand mystery? It's hard, again, because our human eyes deceive us. We see what looks like bread, we see what looks like wine in a chalice, but we know through the words of our Lord that that's not the case. It is he himself. And so it's important for us to act accordingly, to bring that spirit of adoration and devotion and love to the sacrament. For again, we're not talking about just a thing or a concept or some abstraction. We're talking about a person, right? The Lord, our God, Jesus Christ, present to us in that sacrament. And so we have to ask ourselves those hard questions. When I come to Mass, do I come to offer the sacrifice of my praise and worship? Or do I come to just get something from God, right? We are here for God, to render unto him the love and worship which is his due, because that's what justice demands. He is the Lord our God who loves us and saves us. So we ought to always respond in kind to that. Again, it isn't easy. We have to holding ourselves to that truth. It's a hard thing, but hard things are usually good for us, for there's grace and virtue in that. When we come to the holy sacrifice of the Mass, have we done our duty to know the Mass? Do we know the responses? Do we pick up hymnals and look in them? Do we say the responses? Do we sing the hymns? Or do we just sit glumly? And sometimes we're run down, and it's all right to just rest in the presence of the Lord. That's valid. That's real. But when faced with such a wondrous and spectacular outpouring of divine love that again can be invisible to us, let us resolve to always respond to it in kind. Our Lord Jesus Christ so loved us that he gave up everything of his human life for us, poured it all out, and is here with us, for you, for me, for this entire parish community, within this diocese, within this world. Christ is with us. Christ loves us. Christ desires our salvation. So let us always strive to respond to that great divine love with true adoration and devotion.
Thank you for tuning in to the St. Thomas More Lynchburg's Homily Podcast. For the daily reading and to learn more about the community of St. Thomas More, please visit our website at www.stmva.org. If you were blessed by our podcast today, please give it a like, a kind review, and share it with a friend. God bless.